Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's wonderful to see everyone gathered. I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of everyone in DC government, 37,000 strong, who are delivering for the people of Washington every single day. I'm also very happy to be joined by members of my team. If you are a team member, please stand up to be recognized. Thank you. You're going to be hearing from the deputy mayors shortly, and you're going to hear our budget presentation as well with the city administrator and my budget director, Jenny Reed. So let me turn it over to Steve Walker, who will lay out the evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We're excited to have you here. As the mayor said, you're going to hear a presentation on the mayor's FY26 budget, Grow DC. I'm just going to run you through what's going to happen today. You'll hear from the mayor first, then followed by the city administrator, Kevin Donahue, and the budget director, Jenny Reed. Then each one of the deputy mayors will walk you through budget priorities for their respective clusters. This part will take 20 minutes or so, and then we want to reserve as much time as possible for everyone here to ask questions. Our mighty mokers are in the room, and they have microphones, and so if you have a question, raise your hand. The mokers will walk over to you. We want you to tell us your name, your ANC for ANC commissioner, or your civic association if you're a civic association leader, the ward that you're from, and then your one question, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we possibly can tonight, okay?
Okay, so we are going to talk tonight about our FY26 budget, which I submitted to the council last week. And FY26 for us, as you know, begins on October 1st. I know that you have been following as well our issues with the congressional CR problem. You've heard me talk about it in depth. We're not going to talk about that a lot today, but I'm happy to answer any questions about it. Our team, my budget team, the city administrator, and all of our agency directors worked very hard to blunt the impact of that congressionally created problem. And as a result of that hard work, we won't be having layoffs or furloughs or closing any of our facilities, which is a good thing. So I want to just point you to some facts about our town, and all of these things are true, especially as we led up into this year. I called 2024 our comeback year from the pandemic, where we saw our tourism recover, ridership on Metro recover, crime at a 30-year low. Our financials were in very good shape with a balanced budget and consecutively clean audits. Our park system was number one. Our school system continued to outpace the region, especially with enrollment and kids coming back to school. We were working very hard to get our workers back in the office because we still saw the impact of remote work. Unfortunately, after January 20th, we had more uncertain times because of the uncertainty in the federal government. Our CFO has estimated that we could see 40,000 DC residents being impacted by job loss over the course of our 4-year plan. So this is why you hear us talking about FY26 and the other 3 years in our financial plan, and hearing us talking about the need to make up for that potential job loss. So this budget is highly focused on how we could, as a city, replace that economic activity so that we can maintain the programs and services that we have today. If we don't replace that economic activity, we will see that we have to adjust our programs and services or adjust revenues in another way, not growth, but through taxation. So this budget is primarily focused on how we right-size our spending and how we invest in growth. And I have heard many people talking about what cuts there are in the budget, or Bowser cut this, or Bowser cut that. But what they fail to say, also in the same sentence, is how we balance the budget. If we have less revenue, we either have to have less spending or raise more revenue. And so our strategy is to raise more revenue by creating more jobs, attracting more residents, and attracting more business and activity to the district. At the same time, we have to bring down cost, especially in programs, and you'll hear us talk a little bit more about that during this presentation, programs that are growing faster than our revenue is growing. And those programs, almost by definition, is hard. It will be hard for us to afford in this budget. So the first column you see are our estimated revenues from last year. The green column is our most recent revenue estimates, and that green column is what we have to balance the budget on, our revised estimates. And the second purple column that you see are costs. And I know you can appreciate this because you probably feel it in your own household. The impacts of inflation and tariffs, and for us, also increased demand on some of our programs is driving up the cost of government. So that's why you'll hear us talking about the things we need to right size. So with that, I want to turn to the city administrator and the budget director to talk more about our approach.
Sure, thank you. Before we get to the growth agenda, I always like to, whenever I talk about the budget, and I've been with the mayor since our first day, so I think it's my 11th year, context is really important to understand how we construct the budget. So we're unique in DC in a few ways. One of those ways is that we have to balance our budget over 4 years. In other words, if we have all of our expenses line up with revenues for next year, but the CFO anticipates or projects significant job cuts from the federal government or a national recession due to tariffs, in years 2, 3, or 4, we actually have to show how we change our expenses or revenues to align not just with next year, but over the next 4 years. So typically you'll see cities going year to year, sometimes they do 2 years. 4 years is a pretty unique and rigorous way in which we have to comply, and that's by federal law, so we have to make sure we do that. The other thing we have to make sure we do is we have to make sure the city has enough cash in the bank to pay its bills each and every month over the next 4 years. So that may seem obvious that if you're aligning your expenses and revenues over the course of 4 years, that it'll work out. But actually, the way that each month works is the city will spend based on the nature of school starting in September, but property bills and income taxes coming in March and April. We have to make sure we're balanced for 4 years, and each month within those 4 years, we actually have to be balanced. So whenever we were going through the process of balancing any budget, and particularly this year, I know we didn't talk about 25, but Congress is not letting us spend all the revenue that our city earns and generates. So we had to make sure we balance for the federal law for the summer, which we managed to do, next year, and then all the way through to the end of 2029. And as the mayor said, it's both looking at our revenue coming in as well as costs. And before we got to the point where we all were in a world where there were significant job losses in DC, we had fully recovered from what I call the long tail of the pandemic. We had turned the corner on everything from school growth, job growth, income growth. And then we see a change after January 20th related to first layoffs and now the possibility of tariffs. So we had to be able to pivot to make sure that the budget we were developing responds to what the CFO indicates as the long-term trends. and it's both the revenues and the costs. So sometimes even if our revenues don't go down, if a program is costing more and more each year, we have to show how we adjusted that as well. So those are just the dynamics that we have to live within as a city. And I'm going to have Jenny talk about the philosophical approach we have, and we'll turn it back to the mayor for the growth agenda.
Thank you, City Administrator, and good evening, everyone. So as we approached this budget, we wanted to make sure that we did a couple key things, really driven by the mayor's guidance to us to make sure that we had a budget that could adapt to our shifting economy. And that was to build a growth agenda. So we wanted to make sure that we could do things that kept people and families here in DC. We could create economic activity to fund our city services, and we could attract new businesses and create jobs to support the growth in our economy. And I'll turn it over to the mayor to walk through some of the pillars of that growth strategy.
Okay. So part of what we are looking at is how do we keep business in our city. So we have relied in the city quite proudly on the fact that the nation's capital is here. The Capitol, the White House, the courts, all the federal agencies, and so which created very stable employment for our region, not just us, but for our region. Now, with the shift in federal agencies not hiring as much or separating employees, we really have to focus on how we attract the private sector to our city so that if our residents are impacted at the numbers that have been forecasted, that we have enough good companies where people can get good paying jobs and stay right in the District of Columbia. So this budget doubles down on business and traction. And specifically what we mean is we're using some of our attraction dollars that have focused almost entirely on tourists and balancing that with business attraction. We're also reforming some of our zoning procedures to streamline reviews of development projects, and we know we want you to be fully read in on that so that your commissions continue to weigh in and get great weight, while at the same time providing some certainty to how the process proceeds. We're also pausing some of the law that we have related to our buildings and the requirements that they need to, the environmental requirements that they need to meet. And we're happy to go into this a little bit more, but we know that getting construction going and continuing that construction, especially relative to our surrounding areas, is going to be very important in this time of shift. Likewise, when we are going out to attract companies and to attract companies downtown, the cost of the parking benefit program is making it very expensive to choose a downtown DC location. So we'll want to talk to you about that. You're probably hearing a lot about the Rental Act and how we propose to reform TOPA. I regard this as one of my #1 policy issues in this budget. We have, in my entire time as mayor, and you'll see it in the progress report, shameless plug, but that we have focused on building affordable housing in the city. And we've done so at a clip greater than any jurisdiction per capita in the United States. And we've done it with consistency in our investments. So this budget will get us back to $100 million in supporting our Housing Production Trust Fund. But we also have to get our, we call it the rental ecosystem, back to where it was before COVID. We put a lot of policies in place, or the laws were changed, I should say, during COVID that helped people get through an emergency situation. And some of those laws are still in place. And what it has led to is a real imbalance in between people paying rent and landlords being able to enforce rent and landlords being able to keep buildings safe and updated and modernized. So that's one big focus of the Rental Act, and the other is to modernize TOPA. And to focus that, it's a tenant protection that's pretty unique to the district, and it covers all rental housing built after a certain date. And what our proposal is to exempt already market rate apartment units from TOPA and focus it on the affordable housing that it was meant to protect. We also are reducing a tax on employers, a payroll tax that the business community and the businesses that we're trying to recruit point to, and the universal paid leave tax. We are reducing that tax. It's a modest decrease, but we think that is one that is important to demonstrate that we want businesses to be here, and we're still able to provide the universal paid leave that we're so proud of. We're also pretty focused on vacant lots in this budget. You may have heard that I have an eminent domain provision on a pretty I call it notorious. It's notorious to me because it drives me crazy on Florida and New York Avenue. And we've moved a eminent domain piece, which, you know, I'm not like really easy on moving eminent domain, but I think in some cases, government intervention in this regard is warranted. So we're going to really ask ANCs to look at that because it will allow us to treat lots like we treat vacant buildings currently. So I'm pretty sure there'll be some back and forth on that. We are also very, very focused on how we help buttress and really save industry that's very important to us in the district, and that's our restaurant industry. And I'm happy to answer questions about this, but I have to tell you that we advanced an initiative voters approved overwhelmingly a couple years ago. That was a very different environment, not just our economy, but for restaurants. And fast forward a couple of years, and we're seeing a very challenging environment for our restaurants. So I proposed to the council that I-82 be repealed, and that the restaurant industry be supported in a few other ways, including a sales tax delay. We've also included some things that would help make more certain the transfer and recordation taxes. So I'll go to the next slide. Part of the way that we're addressing our shifting economy is to lean heavily in those things that are working for us in the city, and sports, entertainment, and tech are working for us. I know you've heard, and we were proud to announce that we have an agreement with the Washington Commanders to come home to the District of Columbia, and we're happy about that. We were proud to finally secure, after many years of trying, wrestle away from the federal government, the 180 acres at RFK. And I think something that is not much talked about, but I'll emphasize here, is that before we changed that legislation, the Congress changed the legislation late December of last year, the National Park Service was basically the owner of the 180 acres. And the lease that we had with the Park Service for the land actually only allowed one use on the 180 acres. Only one use was allowed, and that was a stadium and all of that parking. By changing the legislation and transferring that 180 acres to our control, we now have the ability to have multiple uses on the site. So the plan that we have advanced, and it's in the brochure in your table, includes the home of the Washington Commanders, but it also includes several other districts for housing, commercial development, parks and recreation space, and the like. We have also seen great interest in the city in techpreneurs coming to the city, startups and growing businesses. And we, of course, have a lot of tech talent right here in the city. We are going to have more incentives related to attracting businesses, including our tech businesses. We're also looking, and we've proposed some more novel ideas, like expanding gaming opportunities in a limited way that will help our hotels and restaurants. As you know, people like bingo. Bingo, poker, blackjack, you name it. So that is a more novel concept that we are presenting to the council. We talked a lot last year about the things we needed to do downtown, and we see it working. We made an incredible investment in the transformation of the Capital One Arena. DC residents spoke loud and clear. The city council supported it unanimously. And we're investing $515 million into Cap One Arena. And you can see the other things that we're doing to expand housing opportunities, make the built environment better, as well as looking to some of the building changes that the federal government is making and trying to shape their ideas, especially in the area between the Wharf and the National Mall. And I think that we're turning to the deputy mayors now to talk about the various clusters of investment.
Great, thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, City Administrator Jenny Reed. Thank you all for being here. I'm Paul Kine, the Deputy Mayor for Education. And I think I'm here just to share with you what we all know, that schools are really at the center and the heart of our city's resilience and the future of our city, which is why I am thrilled that the mayor has been able to propose investments into the school system that will invest in our ongoing success. And I see so many familiar faces here. You know how well we are doing as a city in terms of schools. We are the fastest improving urban school system in the country. We are the only jurisdiction that saw gains on literacy and math in the recent Nation's Report Card. Every single year, our public school enrollment continues to grow. Our graduation rates go up and up and up. Our attendance rates continue to climb, and parents continue, as I say, to vote with their feet, which is why in fiscal 26, it's important for us to take a look at what continuing investment in this success looks like. So first and foremost, this budget continues to invest in our world-class early childhood system. Washington, D.C. leads the country in early childhood education. Did you know that 95% of our 4-year-olds are in free pre-K-4? That is universal early childhood education. And we have fully funded the Pay Equity Fund for salaries for our educators, and we have fully funded the PKEEP program as well as our subsidy program. Secondly, this budget increased the UPSFF funding into our public schools by 2.7%. Think about it. At a time when the overall city budget is going down, the mayor is proposing $123 million additional dollars into our public schools because of the success that we've seen. Much of that is also helping to support the most vital aspect of our schools, and that is our teachers and our teacher workforce. We've continued to raise salaries of our teachers, both in DCPS and in the charter sector. And finally, we've continued to invest in truly evidence-based strategies that are increasing student learning, including our high-impact tutoring, which is seeing a $3 million investment in this cycle. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your service. These are the kinds of investments that are vital to our city's future.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kine. And while we're transitioning over to our next topic, which is public safety, I do want to take just a second to mention that all of the materials that you're seeing right now and more are available at budget.dc.gov. So you do not need to furiously write down everything you see on the slides. They're all there for your viewing pleasure later today. So now I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor Appiah to talk us through our investments in a safe DC.
Good evening, everybody. And so I want to open with a thank you, because truly one of the things that the mayor says, and which is true, is that safety is a partnership with all of us, and it really does take all of us. And so we're really grateful for your continued partnerships as ANCs and civic leaders, because together we continue to drive down crime. We're down 22% in violent crime today, but we're down 43% in violent crime since 2023, which has really taken the work of all of us together. And so there are a lot of ways that we invest in, not only in driving down crime, but really in creating conditions in all of our neighborhoods where people can thrive. In PSJ, a lot of that looks like investing in our people, right? And so you'll see investments here in continuing to grow our workforce, which we're continuing to recruit. We want the best, we have the best, but we want to continue to be an environment where that's the case, and to really retain our really skilled employees. So you'll see here that there's an increase for MPD to continue hiring more officers. And then we're really excited about, you'll see a $1.3 million increase to raise the salary of our 911 and 311 call takers who work so hard. And to continue to retain all of the call takers and dispatchers that we have. And what that represents is that makes us the top in the country, literally, in call taker pay. And so we know that they're so critical in making sure that they answer the call and respond. So we're excited about that. Another thing in PSJ that we really invest in addition to our people, is we want to be efficient and effective. And so we are technology. And so thank you to all of you, because many of you have encouraged your constituents to register cameras through things like our camera rebate program, which we continue to invest in, but also in our real-time crime center that we opened last year that has really helped us to be able to drive down crime. And so you'll see we're continuing to invest in crime-fighting technology and equipment. And then also equipment for our firefighters, you know, the things that are critical, like our firefighting gear and our fleet, which is another $46 million in our fire EMS fleet, a replacement, which is replacement, of course, for ambulances and fire trucks and our fireboat, and for our MPD fleet. And so the other piece, which is really critical, like we said, is in addition to the investments we make in the clusters, it's in the partnerships that we have with all of you. And so while you don't see it up there, we continue to invest in Safe Passage, which I know is important to so many of you, in ensuring that we're able to get our kids to school safely. And also our Safe Commercial Corridor grants, which is another investment we make in partnership with our bids and our community development corporations to have things like community safety ambassadors and, of course, training and technology. And so all of those investments, we're really excited, because we know that what the mayor says continues to be true, that there really isn't anything more critical and more foundational to us as a government than making sure our people are safe. And so we're really committed to continuing to invest in our people and our technology and in our partnerships with you to help us to keep doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Appiah. And now we're going to turn to another topic that we know is near and dear to many of your hearts and very important to the mayor, which is making sure that we not only have a safe DC, but we have a clean DC. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Joseph, the Director of Sustainable Urban Infrastructure.
Good evening, everyone. Just so you all are aware, the Safe Urban Infrastructure Cluster represents the Departments of Transportation, Public Works, and Energy and the Environment. So we are a newish small cluster that hears from all of you all of the time. So thank you for reaching out to us and telling us how we're doing. I'm not going to go through everything on this slide, but I am going to highlight 3 investments that we hear from you regularly about. The first is the mayor's investment of continued support for a program that we created in November to ensure that the entryways and accessways in and out of the city are continuously clean. It's our corridor initiative. We are continuing support for that. In the fiscal year, we've hired 80 temporary leaf employees on a more permanent basis, and they are helping us to sweep streets, clean trash, do landscaping, and making sure that the city overall continues to remain clean. In addition, we are continuing and expanding the extremely popular curbside composting program. So we are moving from an initial pilot of 9,000 households across the city to 12,000 households across the city. And to support those households who are not eligible because they do not receive DPW trash collection, smaller buildings with 15 or more units in them. We do also have smart bins that are getting a lot of attention around the city, where you can drop off your compost, and you can also drop your compost off at the farmers markets. So we are continuing and expanding that program. And lastly, I hear from all of you a lot about our residential trash and recycling collection. We often, not often, but we have experienced some delays recently due to staff call-outs and staff illness and weather. The mayor has continued to provide support so that we can hire extra employees on a swing shift that backfill those call-outs to come back through a route that may have been missed earlier in the day. Thank you all.
Thank you. And now we're going to bring up Deputy Mayor Albert to talk about one of the top priorities of Mayor Bowser since taking office, which is investing in affordable housing and economic development across all 8 wards.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, the mayor talked about economic development and the growth agenda, but a lot of people ask about what about our neighborhoods and the investments that we continue to want to see in housing. So the mayor announced earlier this month that she is proposing to restore HPTF at the $100 million level. And this is a major commitment, a renewed commitment to housing across the city. There are a few other programs that have been really impactful, including the HEIRS program, which is about providing assistance to families to be able to pass on, the home that they own to their children or to an heir. And we have had huge success in making sure that that wealth building among families that own property in DC allows that generational resident to stay in Washington. There's also the Home Purchase Assistance Program, which is HPAP, which is basically down payment assistance for individuals who are looking to buy their home for the first time. And that has been very popular, and we've reformed that program so it can be more efficient in the future. Last but not least, the Housing Authority has a huge role, obviously, in providing housing, particularly for our lowest income families and households. And so we're proposing more than $50 million to support the Housing Authority. There's also continued investment in what we call the New Communities programs. These are programs that, or properties that have had, long-term communities. And what we've wanted to do is either densify, offer modernized, more housing. And so these communities, Berry Farm, which we've already opened one building, second building is under construction, and we have another $120 million to invest in Ward 8 to make sure that we complete Berry Farm. In Ward 1, Bruce Monroe and Park Morton, and then Northwest 1 is right off of North Cap at K Street. And so what about the rest of the city? And what about other types of economic activities that are priorities for our residents? So the mayor mentioned earlier about double downing on a couple different sectors. Sports and entertainment is one of them. We've talked about sports some, but on the entertainment side, we want to make sure that the National Theater, Lincoln Theater, and Howard Theater, all of which have some very unique and specific needs for reinvestment, get funded. And then I think a lot about economic development happening throughout the city, and particularly on the east side of the city. So these are, again, long-term projects that local communities have long awaited our ability, moving forward. Fletcher Johnson, that is continuing to move forward. This is in Ward 7. East Capitol Gateway and Ward 7 has asked for a grocery store for as long as I can. Yes, Commissioner, I see you again. We will get there, I promise, but we got to keep working at that. And so we are holding in the budget money for East Capitol. Hill East continues to be an important project for us, St. Elizabeth's. And then next year in 26, America 250. So this year we get World Pride. Next year we get America 250. In 2027, we're going to have the NFL draft. These major activations are things that are also going to support our economic growth and stability over the next couple years. Last but not least, there continue to be commercial corridors that we want to plan and make sure that we have a vision for and can work toward, and so there's money set aside for that. And you've heard quite a bit probably about RFK Stadium already, but we need to build out the infrastructure at the site, and so we're proposing $202 million for that. So thank you, and I will invite Deputy Mayor Turnage.
Kind. That's okay. Deputy Mayor Turnage.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let me apologize for my voice. I've been ill for a while. I think I'm getting better, but my voice is not. I want to talk a little bit about the most expensive, probably the second most expensive set of services in the city's budget, and that's healthcare. A lot of times when I talk to people about what's in the budget and they focus on particular line items, they forget that in one agency alone, DHCF, the city, spends $5.4 billion on healthcare. So when you see a cut that you don't like, think about the fact that the city is still spending $5.4 billion to pay for the healthcare of the residents of DC. Within those dollars, we had to spend $97 million to cover the increased cost for Medicaid. Medicaid is a fast-growing program. Of that amount, 8.3 was used to cover increased utilization for the services that are provided by DDS for persons with intellectual disabilities. We also, for the first time since before I came to DC in 2011, don't know how it got by the agency, but the dental rates have been flat for years. We increased the rates for 125 different dental codes, and now we pay more than Maryland and Virginia. And we also added coverage for sickle cell to pair it with the FDA-approved drugs that we already cover. I also want to mention that there's soon there will be a new animal shelter that will debut, and we spent $3.9 million on that new contract with a new vendor, and we have significantly high hopes for that. We continue to spend money on Safe at Home to allow persons who are elderly to age gracefully and safely at home with the types of adjustments their homes may need to ensure that they don't have problems with falls and other things that can be avoided. And we increased the money that's available to pay for home-delivered meals. Now, those are the good things that we had to do, but we also had to make some very, very difficult choices, because if you take DHCF's budget in fiscal year 25, the year that we end, and if you ask the question, how much more or less will we have to spend in fiscal year 26 to do the exact same thing we're doing in 25? Well, the answer was we'd have to spend $182 million more in 26, which normally, in the old days of DC's expansive revenue growth, that would not have been a problem. But this year, it's a problem because of the issues that the mayor outlined earlier. So we had to find a way to credibly and thoughtfully slow the growth in Medicaid. And we did it by looking at categories of eligibility, provider rates, and benefits. And we focused some reductions on our eligibility levels, which are the highest in the country. And so what we decided to do was to move coverage for about 25,000 people from Medicaid to either a qualified health plan on the DC exchange, or a basic health plan. It's a federal program that Mila Kaufman and her team are presently designing that will look almost like Medicaid, not entirely have the same number of services, but it will have low to no premiums and very low cost sharing. And that program will serve 90% of the people whose coverage is being moved into another environment. The other 10% will be on the qualified health plan. So with those changes, we believe we have made a conscious effort to preserve health care in a time of very, very difficult, tight revenues. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I'm going to give Deputy Mayor Turnage's voice a quick rest and do our investments in human services. So we have about $19 million invested in our continuum of care for our residents experiencing homelessness, including the continuation of 24/7 shelter availability. We have new investments in pathways for families to exit from short-term family housing, including to permanent supportive housing for about 156 families, and DC Flex, which is a 5-year program that provides a flexible amount of assistance to families who need affordable housing, and that'll help about 460 families. We're also continuing to provide different alternatives to assist families with exit and diversion from Virginia Williams. And then we continue investments in transforming our shelters, both for families and for singles across the district, including nearly $58 million for the Federal City Shelter redevelopment, $43 million for the New York Avenue Shelter redevelopment, and $5 million for the Naylor Road Shelter redevelopment. I'm now going to turn it over to the city administrator to talk about our investments in transportation and the environment.
Thank you. So I'll be very quick. This is an important slide when it comes to neighborhood issues. We're fully funding what the Transportation Department requested to do repairs and replacements of sidewalks and alleys and streets. WMATA, we wanted to make sure WMATA was fully funded, that we did not experience cuts to rail or bus service. Bus service, you should know, it took less than 2 years from March 2020 for bus service to be actually higher than it was before COVID. Rail service is still catching up, so we wanted to make sure we funded in the budget additional bus service and fully funded some of the adjustments that WMATA is making very, very soon around their bus network. And then the bridges that we have that are falling out of a state of good repair, we were fully funding the bridge replacement and repair that DDOT engineers believe they need to make sure all of the infrastructure that we use to travel around the city is in sound and good condition. The one note I'll make on what's the right side is the energy bills for everyone in DC over the past 5 years has gone up faster than all of our incomes or revenue has. The city's no exception to that. So we took efforts to make sure we're more efficient with how we use our buildings, that we set temperature points at points at which it consumes less energy, and we make adjustments to how we buy electricity to be able to be more efficient with your taxpayer dollars. And finally, I think on the next slide, which is going to stay with me, I'll just sort of highlight a couple of things on here. And this is sort of the making sure we have the investments needed to be able to continue, I call it some of the core underlying operations of government, that our contracting is fully funded, that our HR is fully funded, that our buildings that we have built stay in good condition, so fixing HVAC repair, particularly in schools and rec centers, making maintenance repairs for things that are broken. At the very bottom, and throughout this, there's also sacrifices we've had to ask of different programs and people. We had to slow down the rate of growth for city salaries in context of how much pressure programs were under. So we also made adjustments to the cost growth that we saw overall in city salaries. And that's just sort of some of the ways that we made sure to both carve out the ability to invest and recognize we had to pull back in certain areas. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. So we're going to take the questions now. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and a member of the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services will come over to you with a microphone. While we're doing that, I'll remind you of what the Budget Director said. Budget.dc.gov has all of the slides that you saw today. It also has the ward-by-ward one-pagers that you can download. The Mayor mentioned the 10-year progress report. We've got some copies on your desk. You also have a postcard that's either on the back of your table number or on your table where you can download a copy of the report, so there's a QR code there. So we'll start with questions. Who has a question? Looks like table 4. If you can give us your name, your ANC, and what ward.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Nigro, and I am from 2G06, right across the street from the Convention Center. So you mentioned economic activity. I appreciate, I think it's going to be great, and I hope it all works out. But I have been begging for 2 traffic enforcement cameras in my neighborhood for years, and I was told by DDOT you know, it was going, everything was going to be okay. And then a couple weeks ago, they said, we don't have any more money for it. But I'm like, these are revenue-generating cameras, and now they can't do it anymore. So that is my concern, that these basic needs are going to be cut, but yet we're going to have a stadium, which I'm pro-stadium, but why can't we get...
Well, I'm not sure, and then I'll ask any of my team if they're aware of a cut to traffic safety cameras. But what you'll find in this budget is an increase in the number of cameras in general, especially for public safety. Jenny, do you want to say a little bit more about what MPD has advanced?
Sure. So we are not proposing any reductions to traffic or public safety cameras. So we'll have to circle back and find out what the issue is. As the mayor mentioned, we have expanded the number of cameras across the city, including a partnership with WMATA to put them on our buses to make sure that we can keep our bus lanes clear and make sure that people aren't parking in the bus lanes and holding them up.
Right, and so we also, last year, we maintained the Real-Time Crime Center at MPD, which has been helpful in solving crime. So we're very pro-camera. I've asked especially for, you know, I do think we'll get to a concentration of cameras in some of our, where there's a lot of central business activity, and we'll continue to do that. And as for DDOT, like traffic cameras are not like on demand, okay? You don't call and they say, okay, we're gonna give you one, Commissioner. And we also don't base it on how much money they'll collect. They are pretty, they follow a very tested formula about if a traffic camera will improve safety. And that's how we make those decisions.
Thank you. Let's go over to table 6. We're going to try to alternate sides of the room.
Hi, Mayor Bowser. This is Jeremy Sherman. I'm ANC 1A04 in Columbia Heights. My question is also about economic development, and this might be for Deputy Mayor Albert as well. In the slides, you mentioned you want to double down on business attraction strategies and incentives, and also do citywide retail incentives and revitalize commercial corridors in all 8 wards. And I'd love if you can elaborate on that. I understand the importance of investment downtown, but other major commercial corridors like Columbia Heights need investment desperately to recruit businesses, to retain businesses. So these can also be engines of revenue outside of downtown. So what can be done? And I did see that the Main Streets program might be getting a $1 million cut as well. So if you can speak to how that might impact some of the other neighborhoods that don't have like a bid or other types of entities that support those types of economic development.
Sure. Well, one of the big things for Ward 1 in Columbia Heights, and I didn't highlight it, but it was on one of the screens, is reversing what has happened with vending, okay? The council's move, and I have to be very direct about this because Councilmember Nadeau was a big proponent of decriminalizing vending enforcement, which has been devastating to Columbia Heights. And so we have in our Budget Support Act included a repeal, I think that's a repeal of vending decrim. And we have to do it because there have been some very brazen vendors that approach our inspectors who are not law enforcement and they have not been able to fully enforce the law. So I really want to start there because Columbia Heights is kind of the ground zero for that activity. That has made it very hard for us to attract retail. There are other strategies that we have around retail that I think have impacted Columbia Heights as it relates to being able to enforce retail theft. And I'm very grateful that the council moved on that last year with Safe DC or Secure DC. And I think that is helpful. Additionally, our Great Streets programs continue to be funded. I'll ask the deputy mayor to speak to Main Streets. I'm not remembering a cut there because usually the council funds Main Streets, and we don't do it from our end. So let me turn to Deputy Mayor Albert to talk a little bit more about Ward 1 specifically, but other commercial corridors that I put in the established corridors category.
So I don't believe that Main Street's budget has been cut. And also a lot of the grants that DEMPED manages, Great Streets, Locally Made, Neighborhood Prosperity, like all of that is staying, is continued to be funded at an appropriate level. We are going to be, there's going to be a combination of things going on this year, which is some stabilization of existing businesses to make sure that as consumer confidence and just people kind of hanging on to their money a little bit more than they normally would under a growing circumstance, that we have some funds for that. But we also want to continue to support new and emerging businesses. The real thing that I want to talk about is that the mayor has proposed repealing Initiative 82. That's a direct response to what's happening in the restaurant industry. But for the retail industry, what we are going to be looking at, because post-COVID, retail has changed so significantly. And what we want to do is take a new look across the city. What types of retail can we really support? Should we be actively going after and recruiting? Because it's not the same retail environment as before. So we're going to be using some of our Great Streets money this year to understand that strategy. And we can also use some of the funds even to invest in the infrastructure of our commercial corridors so that they continue to be fresh and re-looked at so that they support a modern retail environment. And then, sorry, Mayor, one more thing. You had asked about business attraction. One of the main pillars of our economic growth agenda this year is to make sure that we are properly balancing and funding business attraction. Because we are going to have to replace these federal government jobs. So we're talking about more money being put towards marketing. It has to be targeted marketing to attract the types of businesses that will employ people and that are a good fit for the city. And then also the business development staff and resources and incentives to make sure that we can get businesses to really think about DC as the right place to be.
Mayor, if I could just add on the Main Streets funding, there is not a reduction. What you're probably seeing is some expiration of one-time funding that was added by the council in FY25. As you all probably know, there's two types of funding, recurring and one-time. With the loss of revenue that we were experiencing this year, it was really difficult to restore all of the one-time funding across government.
Thank you. We're going to come to this side of the room next, and just want to remind all the commissioners in the room, the mayor wanted you all to have the special engagement with her and a member of the team. We're going to be on the road, so the mayor's members of the cabinet will be on the road. We have 79 meetings just this month, which includes 48 ANC commission meetings that members of the cabinet will be at and 31 civic association meetings. So I think we're going to go to table number 3 next, and then we'll come back to this side of the room. If you can stand, your name and your ANC or civic association.
Sure. My name is Michelle Bokiran-Urban of Ward 2. I'm chair of District Bridges, the Board of District Bridges, and I'm also managing general partner of the Synergos Fund. So thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor Albert, for all the conversations we've been having in the past weeks. Allow me to say the question, but give a bit of context as well. The $30 million increase for the MPD, I know there must have been various considerations to come up with this number, but is this enough to give us a more safe perspective from outsiders for the businesses we're trying to attract here? From the Synergos Fund perspective, we would love to invest in DC companies, create new jobs here. I'm a relatively new DC resident, just celebrated 5 years here. I've got a kindergartner at the Garrison School, so thank you so much for everything in the educational side. The district has so much of these beautiful ingredients to make this the best city in the US, but is $30 million enough? Mayor Bowser, we met at your office last week, Thursday, and coming out of your office, I drove to my apartment on 11th and W near Florida, only to see police activity around a fatal shooting on 11th and Florida. Is 30 million enough? Because we want people to continue living here. We want to attract businesses to live here, move their families. Is there a number or a better number for safety? Thank you, Mayor.
Well, we think that we have advanced what the Metropolitan Police Force needs and can use, and it's fully in funding, hiring the number of police officers that they can hire in a year. We obviously would like to be at 4,000 police officers. This is the lowest number of police officers that we've had in my tenure in government since 2007, and probably a long time before that. Our pipeline was pretty devastated during the defund years, but we're building back. I think the policy environment is improving to recruit officers, and we will continue to look for ways to enhance the pay and benefits for police officers and our ability to retain them. So we are always open to recommendations about what you'd like to see in your neighborhood, but in terms of police staffing, we think we have the number that we can support. We're at the number of officers, we are significantly below where we need to be with officers.
I said we're going to go to the sides of the room, and everyone in the center was like, what about us? So table number 13, so we'll try to do all three sides, all three parts of the room. Table 13.
Hello, Madam Mayor. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm Commissioner Robin McKinney in the Historic Anacostia, 8806. I see that you put in $16 million for the infrastructure to support the redevelopment of the St. Elizabeth campus, as well as 1234 Marine Brae Avenue Southeast. So we know in the past that DMPED had a couple of developers who had bidded on that contract, and so far I think something else had happened. Do you have other plans to put something there in that development?
Where are we with that, Deputy Mayor? 1234, this is next to the former DHCD building. Yes.
Yeah, so we got quite a bit of feedback from the community, and so what we'd like to do is come back to the community, and there's two options. One is to proceed. Right now, it's not financially feasible. This is per the developer to move forward as planned, so we can, continue with them, or there might be, we've heard a lot of community members who said that they're interested in a different use there. I think we're open to different uses for that site if that's what the community wants to see there. So happy to follow up with you and set up a meeting so we can talk about what the community wants to see there ultimately.
Yep.
Table 1. Table 1. And then,
Sure. Hi, my name is Kamsi McAdams, and I'm 4E05 in Ward 4. I had a really fantastically productive meeting this morning on site at Upshur Community Recreation Facility. We walked the whole facility. We had people from DPR there. We had folks from DGS. And Upshur is slated for a pretty massive renovation, but the reason why we met today was because there's just ongoing safety concerns, everything from like rusted metal on a baby swing to loose pipes, tripping hazards. And we are a little bit concerned about the effectiveness of the 311 system for getting our concerns met, being met a lot with the response saying, well, this is all going to be taken care of in renovation, but it's not slated to start until fall, so I just wonder whether we have
This fall?
Yeah, this fall.
Okay.
So this summer, which is a busy, Upshur Pole is really, really heavily trafficked. We've got some things that are like right in the face of safety going on. We just wonder whether there's like a plan for when projects are slated for major capital renovation. Is there a plan to, triage, repairs leading up to renovation? Because I think what we've been told again and again is, you guys don't worry about that. It's going to be replaced during renovation, but it's not happening for a few more months.
We regard the fall as like tomorrow. So life safety issues will be addressed. So let me have the Ward 4 Mokers, I'm going to get a report on what's wrong.
We sent out a long list today. We took pictures of everything, but anything that's really troublesome, I'm sure you'll get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to come up to table 10, then back to 2, and then back to 7.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhonda Hamilton. I represent 6008, which is in Southwest. I'll try to be brief, but my concern is for the ERAP funding in terms of the reductions in the safeguards and protections that aren't in place to protect families and individuals. We talk about the youth problems a lot, but I don't see the amount of funding that's being put into youth intervention and community stabilization. Also, I saw the money you put into public housing, but we know that that housing is in high demand, is rapidly deteriorating. So we need more money put into it to ensure that the families, when they come out of being housed, they can be placed into stable homes. Also, what happened to the path to the middle class for low income families? I'm also concerned because the economic situation is destabilizing a lot of these families. There are a lot more kids going into foster care, and there are not a lot of supports that are in place for them. So I just get very concerned for our families and how we ensure that we can continue to thrive in the District of Columbia during these difficult economic times.
Thank you for that question. You asked a lot of questions in there, and I think I want to kind of point to what Deputy Mayor Turnage said at the beginning. We usually use a slide that shows how the district's $20+ billion budget is broken down. And our largest cluster of services and supports are the human services. So what we provide in medical insurance and what we provide in other human services supports, be it housing, TANF, food supports. So fully a quarter of our entire budget is spent in those areas. When you add schools, that's like another quarter of our budget that have our kids for most of the day and provide also a lot of those supports. So we continue as a city to invest in families who are looking for that pathway, and into our most vulnerable residents looking to that pathway. I do think it's important in kind of our review of how we get our budget right and right size our budget is to say, what's working? Because we just can't keep doing the same thing. So we have to ask ourselves about these programs, what is helping our residents not be in shelter, but be in housing? What's helping our residents not get a voucher, but pay for housing? What's helping our residents not like go to job training that doesn't turn into a good paying job? And so those are some of the questions that we're trying to ask. Now, you specifically asked about ERAP, and I want to be clear about something because I hear a lot of testimony about ERAP. And what I hear is that people want to go to ERAP so that they can better afford housing, okay? ERAP is not an affordable housing program. It's an emergency rental assistance program, and those are two different things. So for people who need income supports or another housing type, we have to move them to a different program. ERAP is for a family that can pay their rent and ran into an emergency 1 month or 2 months and couldn't pay, and they need some help to get current. That's what ERAP is for. Our ERAP program before the pandemic was $6 million.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
After the pandemic, it ballooned to $40 million. Okay, so we went from a city with people employed and paying their rent to a city with people employed who stopped paying their rent. And it's because of some of the policies that we had to put in place for the pandemic. But it can't be a program that persists at that level because the delta of people not paying their rent, ERAP can't solve. Okay, so that's why we're moving the Rental Act to keep more of those, the policies that were for the pandemic have to evolve. And if we need new policies around affordability, we need to focus on those programs that work. So we don't advocate for any change to the amount that's available for ERAP. We do advocate for policies that make sure that it's being used in the intended way. And so that's what we're staying focused on with that. Now, as it relates to the Housing Authority and its funding, Jenny Reed represents us on the board for the Housing Authority, and she brought to me some very specific insights about how the Housing Authority has surplus funds available for repairs. So in this year, we don't think we need any additional repair funds because the Housing Authority can at least spend through the surplus that they have. And we think that's going to be very important. The last thing I'll mention is we have a program in our Human Services Department that is meant to help people who receive benefits of some kind not have a disincentive to continue on their training and work journey. So it is basically an off-ramp to those benefits. In other words, we don't want you improving your income to mean you lose housing assistance or you lose child care assistance. So this is a ramp off for many families that we think is working that will allow them to circle through our housing programs and allow other people to join our housing programs. This is a pipeline. It's meant to be a pipeline. If people don't cycle through it, then the next family who has an emergency or needs housing help, those programs won't be available. So those are some of the things that we have emphasized in this budget, and we're happy to come out to communities and talk more about them.
Thank you. We're going to try to make another loop around the room. So in this order, table 2, table 7, table 4, and back to 5, and table 1 and table 9.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Campbell. I'm the Executive Director for the Congress Heights Community Training and Development Corporation. First, I want to say thank you, Mayor, for no layoffs, for fighting for our city. That is huge. The question that I have is, are there specific allocations for job training programs that align with the future economy? For example, tech, healthcare, and green jobs. One of the things that you said were working in your previous slide, along with sports entertainment, was tech. And so an organization like ours, we train returning citizens and DC residents, specifically in Ward 7 and 8, for the jobs that are flowing with the economy. So we want to see, are there allocations for that? Tech job trainings and also healthcare trainings, especially with our new hospital, Cedar Hill in Ward 8. We want to be able to train them for those lower level jobs to funnel into those.
Okay. Are you already doing job training?
Absolutely.
Okay. With some of our grant funds?
Yes.
Okay. So the question I'll have for you is, what are you doing with what you have, right? And if we need to repurpose that to our growth agenda. And then what we want to do is see how we can enhance it, especially for our effective organizations, how we want to enhance it. Now, I got to say, for the ones who aren't effective, we don't want to do business with them anymore, okay? And we have some of them. I didn't say you were. I didn't say you were. I figured since you stood up, you are one of the effective ones. But you know what I mean in this workforce space. And so this is what I mean. And this is why I started the Infrastructure Academy. Don't get me on my soapbox with these workforce programs. Too many people are going to programs and not getting jobs. So, like, Commissioner over here just asked me, how are you supporting families? You know the tens of $millions of dollars we put in workforce? We put so much money in workforce, like some of the people that are participating should not need ERAP. Okay, so it just doesn't match up. So but that is an important question that Deputy Mayor Kine and Deputy Mayor Albert are working on in terms of, now we have a need, we have always have a need to make sure our residents are improving skills and getting employed. And now we have residents that have been employed and are going to have to reskill to get employed again. So we are thinking and I'm glad you brought this up, because we're thinking, and we'll talk a little bit more about new strategies, about specifically focused on growth. And I thank you for asking that, because sometimes people come to us with great ideas. I want to train in this, and I want to train in that. That's not what people are hiring for in Washington, D.C. I want you to train for open jobs and then help your participants get in those jobs. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. Table 4, I think I lost more to table 4.
How are you?
Thank you.
My name is Olivia Henderson. I'm the president of the Washington Highlands Civic Association in Ward 8. But the reason I'm standing here today is because one thing that you said was 40,000 residents are going to be impacted when it pertains to jobs. And then it stated that the need to make up those potential jobs. So my question is that as a ANC commissioner for 14 years, I'm no longer one, I picked up that president position to keep people informed, because we always have people come to the community talking about community benefit agreements, in which the community never benefit from it, we never see it. But we always have these contractors come to the community and say that our residents will be the first people to sometimes obtain those jobs. I just want to know, is there any thought of continuing working with labor unions, with the PLA agreements, in order for when those jobs do come to our community, those apprenticeship halls that's teaching our residents OSHA and everything, those local residents can actually maintain those jobs, which are good jobs. I'm a union member. I work for a union that works for me. However, good pay, good benefits, 401, pension, them can be those residents that think poverty is forever when it's not.
Right.
And we can bring them out of that. So
Right.
I think that would be a great relationship.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate that. And we are pleased to advance in our RFK proposal a PLA that will especially impact the trades in Liuna and your colleagues in Liuna. We are carving out of that PLA a CBE requirement for work that's $15 million and less. Now, I will tell you there's a balance, and I'm sure you know what it is. When we put project labor agreements on projects, labor union members get them, but not many are DC residents. Okay, so that's a problem, and I'm looking for ways that Liuna and others can increase their membership in DC. So the next time we have a big project and I say it's a PLA on it, I can say it's labor, it's a union job, and it's going to have a lot of DC residents. Like right now, we can't say that. So that's why I think it's important to carve out some of the work, some of the 1.1 billion, or in work with the team on their 2.7 billion to make sure it's labor and DC residents that are on the job. But we appreciate, and we worked very hard with Liuna on the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge, which is currently our largest infrastructure project. And when RFK is done, that will be our largest infrastructure project. So thank you for spreading that word.
Great, thank you. Table 5 was next.
Good evening. My name is Tom Donahue, Commissioner for 8A01. Talking about Medicaid, how many will be removed from Medicaid? And for those being switched to the new federal program, what sort of differences are there in what services will people be without who are on this, who do participate in the switch?
Well, Deputy Mayor mentioned already that we believe that about 25,000 would be shifted to a HBX program, either on the private market or a new basic plan that's being developed. We have in the budget a kind of ramp up of 6 months, right? 3 months, where we'll work, not only develop that plan, but educate anybody who could be impacted by that shift, so they have time to make the shift. And the way we see it now, because it's still in development, we don't know exactly the differences, but my expectation is that people's out-of-pocket expenses wouldn't change that much. So either it would be low or no premium, and the co-pays would also be minimal. We do think we may have better uptake, quite frankly, because right now we pay a lot for Medicaid, but not everybody uses their coverage, but we still pay. And so I think that what our hope is that this transfer could mean better uptick of utilization of those services. So I stay tuned on what the actual package, the new insurance package would look like.
Thank you. Just a couple more. I think there was someone at table one. Table one.
Hi, I'm Allison Brooks. I'm a former ANC commissioner and president of the South Manor Neighborhood Association. And my question revolves around our youth. And so I know we're focused on FY26, but summer vacation begins in a couple of weeks. And I'd like to know what we're going to be doing with regard to funding to keep our kids busy. Because when, idle hands find trouble. And so how does the budget address that for FY26? But also, what are some of the things we're doing in FY25?
It's a good question. So one of the hardest budget feats that I've ever been part of is we had this congressional interference in our budget that was having us not letting us spend our own money. And ultimately, Congress didn't fix it. So we had to figure out how to do it this year that reflected and complied with federal law and didn't break the government or break the city. A big part of that was making sure we would protect all the investments that we had for summer. So SYEP, summer school, the DPR late night hype activities, the DPR programs. It wasn't easy, but the biggest victory in this budget is that none of that got touched over the course of the summer. So we have the ability to follow through with our commitments to kids. If they signed up for a program, if they are expecting something from us, we're able to follow through on that. The out-of-school time grants haven't decreased either. So we've been able to protect and preserve what we have to make sure that we keep kids safe and busy. The area that we have already started to expand beyond what we put in the budget is some of the work that DPR does, particularly in the evenings on weekends, to be able to activate kids. We had an event that was organized, I think, in about 6 hours to be able to safely activate Banneker Field. We are looking to see how we can make sure the late night hypes are successful and that they go throughout the summer as frequently as possible. And we'll still look for opportunities to be able to turn those modest investments with big effect up as we go through the summer.
Great, thank you. The last couple, 9 and then 6. And then we can stay around for other conversation.
Good evening, Mayor Bowser. My name is Tripti Patel. I'm the chairperson of ANC 2A. And so my question to you is, why are you not respecting the will of the voters on Initiative 82? I am DC's longest serving elected official. That is a tipped worker. And believe it or not, I actually waited on Deputy Mayor Nina Albert when she threw a going away event for one of her staffers. She probably doesn't remember me, but I was the server that took care of you. And at no point did you ever look at me or ask me what I was getting paid when you put a tip against that bill. No one's asking me how much my hourly rate is. I'm still making more than enough money. Initiative 82 has worked for me and my team. I had to break it to a staff of 64 today, that the council, and very sarcastically, in its inherent wisdom, decided to pause the next tipped worker pay raise. For you, maybe $2 an hour isn't much, but for them, they use that to budget their housing cost, babysitting fees, and groceries. And all they could do was stop from crying and say, how could the government do this to them? Because this is the greatest act of economic violence that you could have committed against the second largest workforce. And Madam Mayor, you know that I have defended the priority that is the asset in ANC 2A for you, gladly and happily. I got all 4 lawsuits withdrawn with absolutely no help, and I did it for free. So I say this to you with the respect in my heart. I am not afraid to fight for the second largest workforce in this city. You are not taking their pay raise from them. And believe it or not, if the repeal, which will not happen, does go through, we'll put it on the ballot the 3rd time, and we will win. Otherwise, we will vote all of you out.
Well, thank you. And I say this with respect, because I have a responsibility to tell voters and to tell the council when I think it's a policy that's not working for the district. And if this initiative was a piece of legislation that was passed by the council 3 years ago, I would be proposing to repeal it, okay? Because it doesn't work for the district right now. The DC Council changes laws all the time. They repeal them, they amend them, they change them all the time when they see what's working and what's not working. So your perspective, I appreciate, but what I've heard more is that restaurants are closing and workers have actually lost pay. They're taking home less money than they did before Initiative 82. And so we have to address the present context, not the last context. So you started off by saying, why aren't you respecting voters? And I say to voters with respect, I see the information that is affecting our industry, it's affecting the city's bottom line, it's affecting the take-home pay of our workers. We're losing workers. We lost 1,700 restaurant jobs last year. There's a restaurant closing every day, almost, it seems. And so if not all of it we can change. We can't change the inflation or the tariffs. We're working on changing the federal government's posture as it relates to customers for our restaurants in our downtown. We can't change that people are feeling pessimistic about a recession and maybe spending less on food. All those things we can't change. But we can change a policy that has us as an outlier in this region. They don't have 82 in Virginia. They don't have it in Maryland. They just have it here. That's affecting the competitiveness of our restaurants. So I have to advance that because I know it's right. And so what the council did today, because the next trigger for the pay increase was July 1st, while they're considering my proposal, which is a full repeal, and I stand by that as what's needed to change the environment, they paused the increase by 8-4 vote until they have the chance to consider the whole budget. And as they consider the whole budget, I'm going to tell them that this measure has to be repealed while our economy recovers. And I'm sorry that that's a point of friction with voters, but it's no disrespect. It is something that, like, we change laws all the time. And that's our job. That's the council's job, to make laws or amend laws or repeal laws. They do it all the time. This is an initiative which makes it a more direct appeal to voters, but my argument wouldn't be any different.
Thank you. Table 6.
Oh, my name is Andrea Davis, and I'm a new commissioner of 8A03. And you say you want to grow DC. I am in Ward 8, and I would like to speak about, how my residents feel. They feel that we have been neglected and we are the dumping ground over in Ward 8. In particular, we have seen like all of the drug addicts and dealers are congregated in our community, and we are being neglected. We have over 10 third-party providers under Department of Behavioral Health, but nothing is getting better in our community. And you spoke about you don't want to do business with organizations who aren't producing. So my question is, who is looking into these agencies and what they're doing for those addicts in the community? Because as far as I'm concerned, all I'm seeing is them billing Medicaid, but nothing is getting better in our community, and they're not servicing the downtrodden people in the community. And the children are being significantly affected because all they see is drug addicts. They're walking over prostitutes in the morning time, drug dealers, drug addicts laid out. They're smoking crack all out in the open. So we're tired of being ignored, and we're tired of being the dumping ground. And we would like to see some money come over to our area and start focusing on the public safety and growing Ward 8 to be included in your Grow DC budget. Because we're tired.
Okay, and I want to address, what area are you talking about, ma'am? Martin Luther King, Good Hope Road?
No, Minnesota Avenue.
Okay.
Right directly across from Boone Elementary School. We're the Fairlawn community. We're the forgotten people.
Okay. I want to address that, and I want to particularly understand if we have an agency. It sounds like we may have an agency that's servicing people with substance misuse issues. We're going to look into that. We spent a lot of time on what's now Marion Barry Avenue on one of our long-standing methadone clinics to try to come up with solutions. I will not say that we have all the answers right now, but we are very committed to working on it. One way that we want to approach it is to thin out the population of people served. So if and I'm just going to pull out a number, if they're currently serving 100, we want to work on how we can reduce their patient load to maybe serve 75 or 50 and have another location. In other parts of the city where we do have these services but have fewer problems related to these services, we think that the population served, the patient population is not as large. So we continue to look for ways to do that. And we recognize certainly that everybody wants to live in a safe community, make sure that people aren't living on the streets, make sure that we're proud when we come home, when we have guests, when we attract businesses. So I understand that. And we will want to talk to you some more about the specific agencies of concern and work with the deputy mayor, Turnage, on those issues and circle back. I know of one area that we've worked on for more than 5 years, but let me figure out what we can do here.
I also wanted to add, I forgot to say this, that I am in constant communication with a lot of the addicts, and they have shared with me that the third-party providers aren't really doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're coming into the community, signing them up, and paying them to stay on their roster. That is why we're not getting any services in our community, and it continues to get worse.
Well, that's fraud.
I know it is fraud, so I want to bring it
Okay.
and whoever can look into it.
Well, we will look into it, and I appreciate that.
Good evening, Mayor. She's right, and you're right. One of the challenges that we have in behavioral health
Mike.
is we have a lot of mom and pop operations that do exactly what you described. They pay beneficiaries to come for services so they can bill Medicaid.
That's crazy.
They don't provide the service, and the beneficiary gets worse. The challenge we have, and I would love for you to come to my office and I can sit down and show you the process that we have in place to identify fraudulent providers and we worked with DBH to start a decertification list. We've already had, I think, 5 or 6, 7 providers decertified. One of the challenges we have is the process for adjudicating fraud requires cooperation with oftentimes the U.S. Attorney and the Office of the Inspector General. We will tell them, provider A is committing fraud. We have found that they are paying people to come to them, they're not providing services, and we want to decertify them in their Medicaid agreement. And they will say, we agree with you, but the challenge we have is we're trying to build a case. So we are preventing you from moving forward and decertifying them or freezing their payments. So we have to sit there, and the fraud continues, and only when the U.S. Attorney tells us, okay, now you can decertify that employee, that provider, can we do it? So I spoke at a meeting that the OIG attended 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I told them this is a real problem, that we have a significant minority of behavioral health providers that are stealing from the government, and they are not providing services. And so I said, look, I'm going to talk to my boss and see if there's something we can do to put pressure on you to let us, once we identify fraud, to immediately stop their payment. But in the meantime, DBH has identified and decertified probably 10 or 15 providers, and we have a ways to go. So you're correct, the mayor's correct, and it's a problem that's difficult to resolve, but I think we can get there.
Can we report this to Elon Musk? Can we get him
Well, it is a serious issue in the Medicaid and some other insurance programs. But I do want to say this, Commissioner, because I don't want to leave you or anybody else with the impression that Ward 8 is forgotten, especially now that you're without a council member, but that will change in July. And I do want to call your attention to like the most work that has been done in Ward 8 in various neighborhoods in Ward 8. And please check out the report because it talks about our commitment to open the hospital. It talks about over $1 billion of investment in Congress Heights. It talks about bringing government agencies like DGS, like the Department of Health, like DHCD to Ward 7 and 8 that we hope will spur other development. We have spent more, and one of our most effective economic development grants has been the Food Access Fund, which has allowed us to open more food-serving establishments in Ward 8 than we have ever seen. So while we have a lot of making up to do, I think the government does, we have been able to make huge, huge investments in Ward 8, and we're going to keep doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Table number 3.
Okay, so these are going to have to be our last two guys, and then we'll be around for some questions. Yep, 3.
Table 3.
Hi, Darlene Oliver, 5C05, Ward 5, the Brentwood area. My question is about eminent domain. It was mentioned as we've been talking this evening. I wanted to find out about the garbage dump on Brentwood Road that is supposed to be taken over by eminent domain, but is still there. Now we're dealing with we have a fox family. We have raccoons, we have rats. It's really disgusting. And in the summertime, when it gets to 90 degrees, the odor is outrageous. I wanted to find out, when is this place going to be closed down?
The short answer is we are in the process of constructing a new trash transfer station. And as soon as that one is completed, we'd be able to follow through in the eminent domain for the facility you mentioned.
I'm sorry, repeat that again?
So we have only 2 trash transfer facilities in the district.
Okay.
One at Fort Totten and one at Brentwood Road.
Right.
The one in Brentwood is privately owned, and you're correct that we began eminent domain proceedings against that some years ago. We had a third one that suffered from a fire and burned down. That was city-owned, that we are rebuilding. So we want to be able to wait until we finish rebuilding the one that burned down, because we don't want to be left with only one trash transfer facility in DC. So that construction project will last about 2 years. Now, if there are issues that we have to address right now, we'll make sure we address the issues and work with those owners. But we were going to act to close that down, but when one of our city-owned facilities burned down, we would have, had we followed through at that time, we would have only been left with one trash transfer facility, and that would have left us vulnerable.
So we have to wait 2 more years, we've already waited for 3 to get it closed down. We have to wait 2 more?
It is about 2 more years until that facility will be completed. Yes.
In the meantime, what can be done to clean that place up? Because the rats are outrageous.
I want to make sure we have a significant amount of tension there, and we hold the owners accountable for fixing what they do. So I'm happy to follow up after this meeting and make sure that we're doing our part to be able to keep the spillover effects of that facility from impacting the community until we can shut it down.
Thank you. And Table 5 is going to close us out.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. My name is Adam Prinzo, Commissioner for 3CO2, and I have a question about RFK. So as a lifelong Capitals fan, even though I'm not from DC, I was very appreciative that the teams were able to stay here. I've seen a lot of people on the fence about RFK, so can you tell us a bit about, we're spending a lot of money on it, what we'll get in return, and how you see that and what your vision is moving forward, not just the stadium, but everything else that you have for that campus.
Okay. I don't know if we have a slide that shows the map, but I want to be able to display what our vision is. It's 180 acres. The stadium will comprise about 16 acres, and we will have the Plaza District, which is our entertainment district, the Riverfront District, Kingman Park District, which will mostly be housing, Recreation District. We will have our Sportsplex, and the Anacostia Commons is a riparian area that will forever be a green area. We are going to be delivering the economic development analysis, which I don't have off the top of my head, but I'll turn to Kevin to talk a little bit more, or Deputy Mayor Albert, about the taxes are returned. Bottom line, however, is this is our fastest and best way to get this 180 acres started with a $2.7 billion private investment. The city will support the project with $1.1 billion, $500 million of which will go to the horizontal development of the stadium. Another chunk, I'm going to get about a little bit under $400 million will support parking. And then other infrastructure dollars will be for roads and our sportsplex. So as you compare it to our other investments, whether it's the stadium or the Cat 1 Arena, or whether it's, when I say stadium, I meant Nats Park or DC United or at Congress Heights, we think that this deal compares very favorably to our investments, the amount of money we put in, and what we'll get out of it. I'm just going to do a couple of numbers. For example, the Nats Park costs $600 million. Okay, you know what the breakdown was between the Nationals and the city? Anybody? Like, what was the split? 100% the city paid for it. Okay, and so some people say, well, the Nats pay rent and you don't have a rent payment in this. Well, the Nats didn't pay nothing at the beginning. Okay, on this one. You say you follow the caps, right? So what was the city's investment in the Cap 1 renovation? It was $515 million out of $800 million project. So in this one, the breakdown is the team, RFK, $2.7 billion, us $1.1 billion. So much less percent than any of those pretty transformative projects. So that's part of what we're getting out of it, and we're also getting the total spending, direct revenue, taxes paid, I think rounds up, is $4 billion, but we have a really nice slide that shows how we build up to it that will show. So why you shouldn't be on the fence, okay? This is our team and they're coming home. And cities like ours, we host global events. And right now we can't host the World Cup that's coming to the United States because we don't have an appropriate stadium. And there are other things that I think we should think about as well. The other thing that I would suggest to you is that this investment doesn't crowd out other investments. We use an existing revenue fund, the ballpark fee, which paid for a ballpark and can help us pay for this one. We continue to do our schools, recreation centers, and roads, so that's not crowded out by this investment. And it brings with it a private partner that is pretty substantial in the league. But the time is now. So for those who think we can dawdle and not make a decision or kick the can down the road, trust me, you would feel pretty bad if there was an announcement that the team was going to stay in Maryland or Virginia. So the time is now. We can't dawdle. Yeah. Oh, fabulous. Why don't you?
You know, people are very interested in the economic return of an investment like this. And so we just put on our website today, it's RFK.dc.gov, our full economic impact analysis. So this slide's kind of a snapshot. But people want to understand how it builds up. What's the hotel tax projections? What's the sales tax revenue? What's the property tax revenue? And so we've built that up so that people can really see what that analysis is. I also just want to say, Mayor, we've had great success in this city. The ballpark bonds just got paid off 10 years early because we've done well with the ballpark, that $600 million. And then the wharf, it's both. Yeah, and then the wharf just announced recently that it's paid back its bonds 15 years early. Wow. Yeah. So we have done really well as a city. We know how to do this kind of mixed-use development, and the difference between this stadium and other stadiums is that it is surrounded and a part of a mixed-use district and not just a standalone stadium. Sorry. Perfect.
I'm Cortez Johnson, so I'm president of Fairfax Village Community Association, 18 years, and also a new commissioner in ANC 7B06. So I just wanted to be brief, be brilliant, be gone. I know it's the 9th hour. My specific question that I have is regarding the economic development around the Pennsylvania Avenue East Small Area Plan. I was a part of the plan when it was developed in 2008. I was a part of the redevelopment of the plan, which got adopted unanimously by the council in 2023. We are now in June of 2025. I would ask for your office or anyone in here to visit Pennsylvania Avenue, specifically around the Lower Node area, which is around where the old Mortons used to be. I grew up here and I remember that area. It is underdeveloped. We got the plan developed because we were told we needed the plan in order to fuel development there. So I'm asking you to perhaps look at it, prioritize it. If it's by eminent domain, you got to do something. It's a hodgepodge of various issues there that the agencies are struggling with. You've got WMATA issues, you've got DDOT issues. Everybody's like, what do we do? I think it probably would be better to have maybe a project director or a project manager that can help prioritize what the needs are, because the community, it's just a heavy lift. We can't spearhead that plan. So because it's adopted, you signed it, thank you so much, the council approved it, we're just ready to see the fruit of the labor. So, and I'll just say this, I'm a millennial. I didn't even expect to still be in Fairfax Village. I've owned my unit for 20 years.
God bless you.
20 years,
Yeah.
and I'm just saying 20 years of participating in the community, I see why some people get tired and leave. I don't want to be a millennial that does that either, but I can't, as the Bible says, cast my pearls to swine. I don't want to stay if I can't get any help. So I'm putting it on any and everybody, if you can help us out to move that plan forward.
Yep.
I think you all would like to see something different in that area, because we see it every day.
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I'm a great believer in advancing small area plans, getting community consensus, and sending the message to the private sector that we're ready. And that's what you've done there. We've moved, I think, funding for 3 additional plans in Ward 7 and other Ward 7 communities that we're going to work on. And one of the most important things that I think that we could do is get some more private dollars in Ward 7. I say this in all seriousness, but when we bring $2.7 billion worth or $3.7 billion worth of construction to RFK, it lifts all boats, including at Hill East that we've had trouble attracting folks. We're very focused on the Capitol Gateway, which somebody asked about earlier. So we have advanced some district dollars to help some of these projects get off the road. So what the small area plan for us is a roadmap, but it needs our intervention, but it also needs some private interest. And so we'll need to keep working on that. I like your idea, very specific and actionable idea to have some project managers that are spearheading. Let's look at the completed small area plans in Ward 7 and the ones that we are going to promote. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to see you out in the neighborhood.